We live in an era where if you parachuted on planet Earth and somehow you had no context of what was going on in the music industry, you would think this is the best time ever to be alive. Yet there's a paradox, right? There's a digital explosion and an explosion in consumption, but yet there's this incongruency of the people that are making the music are somehow not being compensated in a manner that reflects this explosion. So for me, this is what's driven this initiative from the beginning. We launched the Open Music Initiative as a result of our efforts as an institution to create an ecosystem that recognized and compensated the rightful creators of music. Part of the way that you bolster economies is looking at the relationships between producers, middlemen, and consumers. So wherever you look at the supply chain, there's usually asymmetry with, more often than not, the companies in the middle making the most amount of money and the producers and the consumers sort of getting the short end of the stick.
There's a couple key themes that really underpin and are threaded throughout all sectors. Things like identity, things like ownership, things like being able to engage in value-creating relationships, or what people call transactions, with others. And those three things you see in music, you see in agriculture, you see in literally every type of business around the economy.
Right now, there are many countries where poverty cycles just go on and on and on and on because no one can claim, for instance, that they own property, right? So this idea that you can transact with your own proven work with someone who desires to transact with you without a lot of people or intermediaries or institutions in between is hugely important.
The Inter-American Development Bank is focused on primarily economic development in Central and South America. So when they found out about the Open Music Initiative, part of what we worked on was to identify artists from these regions that would bring their opinions and their hopes and aspirations and challenges and objectives. So that's what we sought to do in collaboration with IDB.
I'm from Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, and primarily I'm a performing musician. I play the steel drums or the steel pan. I also play different instruments, so keyboard or piano, drums, trap set. I also do production work for musicians in Trinidad and Tobago and for myself, as well as I do some music technology in terms of acoustic instrument sampling.
I'm a recording artist, performer, writer, musician. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, so I play reggae, dancehall music. And I come from a musical family. My dad, Freddie McGregor, he's pretty much an established icon in reggae music. So myself and my siblings, we're just here continuing this legacy and, you know what I mean, spreading this good music to the world, to the lovely people.
My own studio, own record label, RMR Records. A lot of artists come to my studio, whether if you do 45 or dubs or whatever, then come to my studio. Big artists from Jamaica, Beanie Man, Elephant Man. Anyone who sound good and want to record, we work together and do some production.
A lot of the content is created by an arranger or a musical director who is part of the steel band. And as it is right now, what they do is they take a song, a popular calypso song or a popular soca song, or even a worldwide song, even something like maybe a Michael Jackson piece or something like that, and arrange it in their own style. When you do an arrangement, it comes like an interpretation of someone's music, which is like a derivative work. So there is still a big gray area there in terms of, okay, how is that derivative work covered? Is it that you pay the publisher? Is it that you pay the copyright holder or the writer or the owner of that song?
Music in general, everyone borrows from everyone.
Yes.
Everyone takes pieces from everyone. You know what I mean? And I mean, that's beautiful. You know what I mean? That's the joy of creating music. Even modern hip hop right now, a lot of it is Caribbean influence. A lot of the hits, the major hip hop and even pop hits, you know what I mean, are Jamaican, Caribbean influence. You know what I mean? So it's all a marriage, you know what I mean? Everybody take and borrow from everyone. And You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And one of the challenges around music as it relates to copyright is that when you have a song, you automatically almost always have two copyrights of that song. So you'll have a copyright that represents the rendition of the song, the version of the song, and then you also have a copyright that represents the actual melody and lyric. And so you start to begin to see there's some complexities here.
If I record an artist, if the artist write the tune, he will register it with the copyright company as he's the writer. And if I do the rhythm, I register the rhythm as I'm the composer. When it comes to royalty, I have nothing to do with that because the company, the ASCAP or BMI or PRS, whoever he register with, will send the royalties directly to him.
Where I think our challenges lie is that we are now, in most parts of our sort of development as a society, moving from modeling to measuring, moving from unstructured data to structured data. If you think about things outside of music, the way that we can now quantify massive amounts of information. I mean, what is Facebook but a massively quantified set of data, right? What are wearables, but massive amounts of data being quantified and measured and then spit out in some useful way. So music has not done this, right? Music still very much exists in unstructured data, in a sort of, well, we're not really gonna measure, we're gonna model. There's no better example of this than the societies, the collection societies, where they will say, well, we don't really know how frequently your song is being used in a public performance, whether at a live venue or on TV or whatever. And in fact, we're still relying on things like DJs filling out cue sheets, or some producer of a TV show writing a thing down, or some random surveyor who works for ASCAP wandering into a club and listening to a set. And then in 2017, in my mind, that's inexcusable.
We do have two copyright organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. One is called COT, the Copyright Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, and they have a competitor, which is TTCO, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Copyright Organization. So these two PRO groups, they have been trying. They have been trying to collect and stuff, but I'd say their reach is limited in terms of what they know and what they're able to get.
The company were registered in Jamaica, JCAP, and none of the artists don't really want to work with them because at the end of the day, sometimes they don't get a check at all. Or if they do get a check, it's not nothing to talk about. Like, might be embarrassed to tell somebody, that's what you get for your royalties. So most of the artists, especially the big ones, them go to the foreign companies.
It's difficult for Caribbean persons to register with international PROs. So for example, ASCAP and BMI, as soon as you go to register, they're going to ask you like for a social security number, or what citizen of what country you are in order to represent you. So unless you're set up properly where you have a business in the US or you're a US citizen, so it becomes increasingly difficult to subscribe to a different PRO. So I think we need a little change at some point, and the blockchain technology and forensic audit trails and that sort of stuff is really where the future is.
I like to talk about this pendulum that sways. And on this side are the creative people who write music, compose music, write books, invent things. There's a supply chain that swings over to here. So as the supply chain swings over there, there's less compensation available for those who create, invent, make music, and musicians and stuff. So one of the things that I think we're bringing to the table is technologies that can help correct that.
Let's say you stream a song on Spotify, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be Spotify. Who gets paid, how much, and so forth. That is a gigantic pain in the rear end to figure out, and there's all kinds of disputes about it and all kinds of issues around that, where you cannot get by with blanket licenses, with educated guesses. You have to have precise data, and it's got to be in real time, and it's got to scale to billions of transactions per year. And for somebody who's in a country with not great technical infrastructure, they could still work with service providers and gain the benefit of this technology.
Today, everybody can watch YouTube videos and watch video on their phones and stuff. And there's a standard that evolved called real-time streaming protocol. So that came out of work that my first company did. But on the other hand, there are lots of companies doing streaming and VoIP, and they use different encoders. And so if you encoded one way, I couldn't decode you, right? So building in this level of interoperability into an architecture allows things to communicate and relate and collaborate with each other. So that way, every single company can have its own implementation, and as long as we talk to each other, it works.
Continue to go down that path a little bit. And do you want to introduce the dreaded blockchain component into this?
Well, to build on Dan's point, again, for some people in the audience, the word blockchain is brand new. But what's exciting about blockchain is that because it records transactions in a way that's inalterable, you're able to track origin and all the different people that have been involved in the creation of something new. If you're Facebook, you think, I want as many people to consume my product as possible, and I will get paid for it. The more people you reach, the better you are. In the music industry, because we've lost control of the product that we're making and we don't really know who's consuming it, we're thinking of restriction. So this is important because when it comes to remuneration or compensation of these owners, this can now become a reality.
At its core, blockchain is a database, no different than an Excel spreadsheet or a MySQL database. The difference with blockchain is a number of really, really important attributes that differentiates it from just sort of a database that we think of today. The first one is that a record that's put onto a blockchain is what they say immutable, meaning it can't be taken down. It's there and nobody can go and change that record. And why that's important for the music industry is because the music industry has had a really, really long history of kind of losing, whether intentionally or otherwise, the records of contracts and who owns a copyright. The second attribute is that it's decentralized. Decentralized means that no one particular entity or person or institution owns it. Most of the databases in the record industry, whether it's a music publisher's database or a society like an ASCAP or a BMI or a collection agency, they are owned and they are controlled. And in many ways, the value of these institutions springs from the fact that they own these databases. They profit from it. A decentralized database means no one particular entity or institution owns it. Rather, it's spread across a lot of nodes in the same way that the internet is. So the idea that we can decentralize it so it's not owned by anyone is really important. The third element about blockchains is this thing called smart contracts. Most transactions today, whether you're transferring money through PayPal or credit cards or whatever, there's a lot of intermediaries sitting between you because there's lack of trust or because there's the lack of ability from software side to do things. But blockchains have this ability to say, okay, if this set of parameters is met, then something else will happen. For the music industry, that's really important because it can allow for people who have rights to say, well, if somebody satisfies these certain requirements, whether it's payment or what have you, then they can use my work. And then again, going back to the idea that transaction, that record will be immutable, you'll see it all the way through the value chain.
I can share my own experience in some e-commerce problems in that I do have a small music technology company called IDEO, where we do digital sampling of acoustic instruments, such as the steel pan, such as Trinidad percussion instruments, that sort of stuff. And as we grow, we have customer base all over the world. We have customers from the US, the UK, from Canada, from Japan, from Australia. And that's the beauty of the internet. The internet connects you to customers globally. But the downside to that is revenue collection. So when we started, we said, okay, we're going to try to use PayPal at first. And so PayPal worked, but then there's a percentage taken back, and then there's currency conversion because we're not US-based. Our currency is TT dollars. So we have to do currency conversion, and we ended up losing out on that transaction. So we said, let's go to e-commerce, let's do credit card transactions. And then that becomes costly in terms of it's a volumetric cost. So as you have more volume, the cost gets lower. But for a small business, of course, that's difficult. Now, enter blockchain. Now, we haven't adopted it as yet, but I think it's one of the things that we're going to be picking up on, where you don't have that concern about the charges per transaction and worrying about where the money is going and how the currency is being converted, and also about having some sort of recourse in the event that a transaction doesn't go through properly or someone is not satisfied with their product. So that technology is definitely applicable to e-commerce and any business that wants to change into e-commerce. So I think blockchain is something that's really disruptive. It's going to really shake up how e-commerce looks, hopefully within the near future.
In order to advance this discussion, we created this construct of a lab that we've done in collaboration with funding from IDB, as well as our partners Intel and TiVo, and then taught using a curriculum by the design firm IDEO in order to produce prototypes that would make the abstract tangible.
The Summer Lab is actually the opportunity to start to explore these technological concepts or these policy concepts in experiential fashion. So then you can find out, well, even if we know the technology works, would an artist actually be interested in engaging with it in this way? Or would a consumer, a listener, or a fan be excited because they have these new opportunities that they didn't know they had before? So the Summer Lab gives us the opportunity to actually explore that through things like design, right? This ability to take abstract thoughts, use your imagination, and make them real so other people can experience them too. We ended up inviting 50 students from around not only the United States, but also Europe, South America, to come and do a hackathon. We were looking for a lot of different things. One is some pretty hard skills, like, are you a developer? Or are you a musician? Or are you a business-minded person? But then there's soft skills too. Are you a good team player? Are you a creative thinker? In the end, we ended up choosing some computer science majors, several musicians that also happened to be amateur coders, business majors, several graphic designers that could also do UX design or user experience design for digital. And then we built teams of 4 or 5 people each based upon getting that right mix of skill sets.
We were given the brief of the cataloging, the distribution, and attribution of live DJ mixes. At the start of this program, we learned about how IDEO does human-centered design, and we applied that to our research and our execution.
Design thinking. Basically what it is this realization that if you use the sensibilities and the methods of a designer, you can use it as a creative problem-solving tool to get to new solutions. So versus an analytical problem-solving method, it's an imaginative, creative problem-solving method.
It was super different for me. I come from workplaces that are much more structured and set goals, and IDEO was much more like do stuff and then like possibly throw it out and start over. It was good to be in an environment that was very different and pushed me to think in a different way and learn to work in a different way.
By the midpoint, we can actually bring people together and have a conversation about what's working and what's not, what's appealing to members of the Open Music Initiative, what's appealing to members of the music industry, and then from there, make course adjustments for a final demo day.
It's ideas that come from people with not a lot of cynicism about the industry, not a lot of cold, long years of just being beaten down by the industry. It's gonna take that in order to help solve some real big problems.
We are really impressed with what we've seen during demo day today. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a much larger investment and participation from ourselves over the course of next year's Summer Lab.
What we're most interested in for inspiration is actually talking to end users and understanding how they live, what they want, what their desires are, and then matching that with technologies or matching that with business models.
The 3 artists worked directly with the 4 teams. They were active in beta testing and offering suggestions in terms of how these different ideas and how these different prototypes could be improved.
We need to go over a presentation, and they gave us feedback, and they were like, oh yeah, this could totally work. And I felt like I was doing something real and solving something that I'm extremely passionate about, and this was like an amazing experience.
There's so much DJs in the world, and most of them go dance. Them don't have a set playlist what they're gonna play. It's just random, depending on the crowd and depending on the vibe. So what Loom does, whatever song play, it come up automatically. So I guess that information, that data can go to the copyright company and show like which artist get played in the dance and what time. And so I wish every DJ would use them software.
Yeah, this is the one where he had like more detailed comments.
After the midpoint, we kind of pivoted and started thinking more about how can we tell a story inside of our product and create an environment that's engaging, not in just the sense that there's information, things to do, but there's a story being communicated through the product, through the visuals in our VR environment, through interactions, through things flying into the screen and things like that. We had a ton of room in VR to get pretty crazy.
These teams that I've seen over the last couple of days, they are really at the forefront of technology in terms of blockchain and other technologies. And there are a lot of things that I've seen that can be applied to international artists, especially in the Caribbean and especially in Trinidad and Tobago.
Our presentation was actually completely different because they had given us some really great feedback on storytelling and just what they've experienced as well.
EchoWe, which is an online data source for getting copyright permission to cover people's music and that sort of stuff. I think that one is definitely cool because with addresses in need back home in Trinidad. So I may go and say, well, I want to do a steel drum cover or a steel pan cover of an Ed Sheeran song or Bruno Mars song or any song. How do I get in contact with them? How do I get that permission from them in order to publish it? If I go to my local copyright organization, they're going to tell me, well, we're going to probably get a mechanical license for it, but the mechanical license is only applicable if you do a CD or a record or something that's physical. But it's okay, you can probably do that and then put it digitally released, and then it's going to lead to a lot more trouble. Imagine I do a cover and it becomes extremely popular, and then I may get a legal letter saying, hey, you really need to take that down. So I think a website like that where you can get in touch with the publisher and purchase the copyright, I think that's really, really awesome, and I think that's needed.
Good job, guys.
So they lent their voice and their opinions, and without them, I am convinced that these prototypes would have been fantastic in conception and in theory, but not in actuality or from a usefulness standpoint for that particular community that we're, at the end of the day, as an initiative and as Berklee, care to service.
What I think I'm most excited about for the music industry is we're in the 21st century, and everything the music industry is built upon is the 20th century and some 19th century. Even what we call mechanical rights are based upon those little cylinders you put in a plate or piano, and we still talk about them today. All right, we have moved on, right? We have synthesizers, we have MIDI, we have other things. So I'm most excited because I feel like a lot of what the foundation of the industry is built on, and the way we distribute music and the way we think about rights, is actually restrictive in a way that doesn't need to be anymore in the digital era. And I think we haven't even started to see what it means to open up the experiences for fans yet, and for artists.
The key is that artists need to be thinking forward and looking for any technological benefit that they can use to increase their sustainability and their awareness. In developing countries, those that sort of stand up and say, I'm interested in trying, right, will gain benefit, but it requires a real commitment of experimentation and a real sort of element of risk and a sort of DNA of I'm going to go out there and put myself out there, and it may not work. But what definitely doesn't work is sort of putting your head in the sand and thinking that these technologies are going to go away.
The interaction with blockchain, just to get collections, just for PRO collection and that sort of stuff is really interesting, and I think that needs to keep going. I think that this is the forefront of where music technology needs to be. And I think a lot of the development moving forward needs to be focused on technology and on collection because the music industry needs to find a way to survive.
I mean, we just need a system where the owners of the music, are directly benefiting from the fruits of the labor. We're down for the change and up for the challenge. Yeah, for sure.
Doing music, your creativity, you put your all in it. And sometimes you work so hard on it, and then when you release something, you see you never get the feedback and you never reach the people where you want to reach. You have to wait a long period or go through so much channels to get it out there. Understand? So that's a little problem we have. But hopefully with the projects I'm doing here, we can solve most of them problems.
So it's extremely important if you are a creative person or you're a producer of a good or a service, if you're a citizen, getting engaged, learning these technologies, understanding their impact, engaging in a dialogue, not feeling that your voice doesn't matter. It's absolutely important, even if you don't consider yourself to be a technologist. But somehow, over the last few years, more and more and more of us decided to educate ourselves about this technology. And you educate yourself by doing and by reading and engaging and talking. So my message is to do the same.